Howdy, folks. I'm Uncle Bill.
I'm the creepy Kentuckian, if you will. What we got up today, Uncle Bill? It's a fan requested review, I think.
Yeah, we're going to review a widely known but probably little seen documentary that was, I don't know, man. This was like I won't say it's like a counterpiece to like Faces of Death or something like that, but it is definitely interesting, definitely dark, and definitely like one of the more kind of gritty documentaries that I've watched in a long time. This is The Killing of America.
From
Which
1981. Came out after Faces of Death, actually. Faces of Death was like 79, I think. So yeah, this is like a Mondo movie, I guess is what they call them, which uses a lot of news footage and just, I don't know, stock footage of violence and violent acts and everything throughout the history of the United States.
it's really kind of, I don't know, it's kind of unique because it is a documentary and it has real footage. It's got a narrator that's amazing. It's like uh
Yeah, I looked him up. He was actually Chuck Riley was his name, and he was a narrator for a lot of stuff back in the day, and he was very like fucking effective for this. Like it was just straight. And then the man was shot dead.
yeah, it's like the Robert Stack of like narrators of this kind of stuff. But so it starts out kind of like exploring with the idea of kind of exploring violence in America. And this is weird because they were talking about this stuff 40 years ago that they're still talking about today, which is like how many guns people own, like how many violent crimes that there are, how many shootings and things like that happen every day. So that's like the start of the documentary, where it's basically just like showing different kind of like police interactions with people and people getting shot by the police and people shooting at the police and people killing each other. And this is all real, like real life kind of documentary stuff. So it goes into all that in some great detail, and kind of like the backdrop is, you know, what's going to stop all this violence, which is weird because now it's like 1,000 times worse, like than it was then.
Well, it's interesting because, like, I guess it was obtaining a gun was way easier back then than it is now. But still, people today, I mean, there's probably more violent acts today than there were 40 years ago. I mean, probably quadruple the amount, I would guess, right?
I just saw something today that said that there has been like 200 mass shootings in this year alone, and we're only in May. So yeah, I mean,
I mean, I don't want to dive too deep into this because I know you're kind of a pro gun person, but I mean, at some point, like some of those assault rifles and stuff, I don't know if people should be able to buy those at all.
well, oh God, see, this is
It's
weird.
gonna get us in trouble, Uncle
Yeah,
Bill.
we're gonna get in all kinds
It's
of
a
shit.
it's a good
I
debate though, I think, because like, okay, I understand people, you have the right to bear arms and protect your family and everything, right? But when they wrote that in the Constitution and everything, these weapons that are out now did not exist.
Well, there's so much like, oh God, there's so much, and the documentary actually goes into some of this stuff like 40 years ago. But okay, so part of it is like I love to shoot. Like, I mean, I just enjoy like shooting, not necessarily
People,
at people, no, but just like target shooting.
get out
Um,
the yard.
that'd be so cute. No, not like that. And I've got my CCDW, which is the concealed carry, license and all that.
That sounds like a
And
fucking wrestling promotion.
it does.
Say, damn you, boss. Paid for
I
rec center.
I probably own close to now probably like 25 guns of like different like handguns and things like that. But I don't really understand the idea of why people get so pissed off about assault rifles either, to be honest. Like, so that I just wanted to say all that just to say this. Like, I mean, I own all this stuff and I shoot all the time and I'm like all for guns and whatnot, but like I agree with people who are saying like at some point, like you don't need like a 30 round fucking AR-15. You really don't. Like there's no.
The benefits of outlawing that totally outweighs like whatever, like some. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that just want to fucking light up a hillside or something like that. My uncle was that way,
Yeah, I guarantee
right?
it.
Just wanting to
Yeah.
fucking blow shit up. But at the same time, man, I
Light up a
mean,
hillside's the best thing.
hey,
That's what they do around here, I
it is
swear.
what they do. It's fun around here. But man, yeah, like a weapon that can kill fucking like 30 or 40 people just like that. Like that doesn't need to be in the hands of anybody, I don't think. I mean, maybe if we're going to war or something, but yeah, I mean, civilians should not have that at all.
And just the idea too that like people are always like, well, you got two different arguments. Like the only two arguments to this are like either we take away like all the assault rifles or we get more guns. That's the opposite thing. People are like, we need more guns. We need guns in school and like guns in like everybody should have guns. That way you can like, if something like that happens, you can kill the person. Listen, here's the problem with that line of logic, by the way. If something like that happens, like number one, you are not going to be prepared for it. Like if somebody pulled out an AR-15, if you were at Walmart and somebody pulled out an AR-15 and started shooting, you wouldn't know what the fuck was going on until you were dead. That's what would happen. Like
Yeah.
it would just be mass confusion. Like nobody would know what was going on, and then more than likely you get shot. Even if you had a pistol with you, like somebody shooting at you with a rifle, like you're not going to
Yeah,
win.
you're going to be in shock. I mean, who
Yeah,
knows what the hell you'd do? But yeah, I mean, this documentary here, getting back to it, I think a lot of the events that they cover in this documentary probably led up to a lot of the gun laws that, the background checks and everything like that, because, a lot of this stuff like assassinations and just random acts of violence and stuff like that was going pretty crazy around this time period. And I think this documentary covers from like the early 60s to the early 80s.
yeah. So it talks about like Kent State, where the guy got up on the tower and like the bell tower and was shooting everybody off the bell tower. Charles Whitman. It
Yeah.
talks about the riots and things like that. Then it talks about, like you said, like assassinations, like you know, Robert
JFK.
Robert Kennedy, JFK, Martin Luther King, all that. And it shows like all the footage that you could show, I guess, at that time, like that anybody had access to, it would show.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that the JFK footage, that his brain basically, like his head fucking like parting, that was on news stations back in the day. I'm pretty sure. Like I remember my dad saying that they broadcast that shit on the fucking news.
Yeah,
So
I
just
can
think
believe
about
that.
that. Yeah. Early 1960s. Um, and then they have the attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan. They've got that on there. Um, I mean, they've got all kinds of like lesser known, assassinations and murders and
Yeah.
stuff like that too.
A lot of stuff about
Which,
serial killers. There's a lot about like Gacy and Bundy and a lot of the bigger name guys that were prevalent at that time.
yeah, they cover Manson a little bit in
Yeah.
it as well, and the Manson family. Which I think the Manson killings and everything, like that was one of the first serial killers or that family. Well, I don't know if you want to call them serial killers or not, that were kind of like sensationalized the news, right? So that was the one of the first of many that would come on later. And I think that's what pushes a lot of these fucking nuts. They want to be famous at at any cost. And I think the Manson, especially Charles Manson, like that was one of the first big ones.
Oh yeah. Like that had to be like the first one that got any kind of like media exposure like that. There were ones before that, but I think that was the one that was kind of like huge. I think of what else it covered too. So you had it had like the political part, the serial killer part, just the random acts of violence kind of part, the cops part. the celebrity part where it talked about John Lennon and like people like that got killed.
Yeah,
Showed like footage from that.
the Jonestown thing, which there wasn't a whole lot out about that. They didn't have too much on that because I guess that was in the late 70s. This came out in the early 80s. So a lot of the stories would come out later. Like they did a whole documentary about Jim Jones and everything that happened over there. That was fucking nuts. I think it was 48 Hours or one of those shows that did it like a couple of years ago. That like some of the photos, like I don't know, have you seen the photos of like the people
Yeah,
sprawled out? You know,
yeah.
hundreds of
They
people.
show those overhead photos like of like helicopter photos, and it looks like there's like a blanket or something covering the ground, but it's just like bodies like
Yeah.
lined up. You know, it's yeah. That whole thing is one of the hardest things for me to understand, like how that all was able to happen. But I guess
Is that still the largest like mass suicide or whatever?
it's
Like it was
got to
like almost
be.
1,000 people, I think they
Yeah,
said, right?
it's got to be.
Jeez.
Um, but there's been so many documentaries about that now too.
Have they ever made a feature length movie about that?
Yeah, there's been a couple made that are. I don't know that now, not like theatrical movies or anything. I don't think, but like Netflix has made a couple of movies about it. Um, I'm trying to remember that one that was just out not too long ago.
Hmm. Yeah, I
I
think I know. I was being more along the lines like a mainstream theatrical type deal.
I don't think so. That would be really difficult to make that.
Well, I
Like,
mean, it's gonna be a downer of a movie too. I
yeah,
mean, I don't know how you would end it, but
they never
yeah,
really made a movie like that about Waco either, though. Like a theatrical movie about what happened with Waco. You'd think they'd do that at some point.
yeah. I mean, it would be interesting if they would really tell. I think the Waco thing could have been avoided. Like, I don't know how much you
Oh,
looked
fuck
into
yeah,
it.
it could have.
Like
Yeah,
that, I think that the FBI or whoever, I mean, I think they were the ones, or I mean, that, well, I think they were responsible a little bit for all that shit going down too.
have you watched that documentary that Netflix had on about Waco? It's amazing.
I think so. How long was that? It was about 3 or 4 years ago.
No, I mean, there was just one out like, it's just been a couple months ago.
Oh, I haven't seen it then.
It's like a multi-part they break down everything and that's exactly what happened. Really what happened was, like, you had 2 different sets of people that were working on that, okay? The negotiators and then, like, the SWAT teams. So, the negotiators were trying to, like, just stall and talk him out of there and get him to come out, like, without anything happening. And then the SWAT team guys were like, "He's never gonna come out, like, we're gonna have to go in and, like, before something happens and take him out." So, eventually what happens is the SWAT team guys win that debate, and that's when they go in with the tanks and the tear gas and all that shit, and that's when all hell broke loose and, like, everybody started, like,
I
shoot
remember
yeah.
watching that on TV. Like, I think we were in like the 6th or 7th grade and had it on the classroom. Like, because he was held up in there for how many days?
Oh, man, it was, like I forget how long. It was over, like, 2 months, wasn't it? Like,
I don't even remember, but yeah, this is like 90. What year was this? 92, 93, something like that. The
it
Waco
was in the
thing.
90s, yeah.
Yeah.
I wanna say he was in there for, like, a long time. I'm gonna look it up just to see. Like
Yeah, I think
80 days or something.
I'm pretty sure that we were in middle school because I can kind of remember being in middle school watching that like on TV. Um, but this movie though, getting back,
Yeah.
what was it, 93, 92?
Oh, I'm looking it up for some reason, it's taking forever.
Um,
Probably trying to run too much shit at the same time.
Towards the end of the movie though, they did kind of turn it into, I think, almost like an anti-gun type thing. I mean, they were talking, about regulations at that point in time. You could order guns through the mail and get them delivered, right? In the early 80s. Like, hey, sure, go ahead.
That's a great idea, yeah.
So any fucking nut could order a gun. But yeah, a lot of things like as far as regulations, the guns and stuff has changed. But man, like the violent acts and the murders and everything's gotten way worse in the last
That's
40
yeah,
plus years.
that's the crazy thing about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, anti-guns is one thing, but I mean, hell, I think the media actually has a lot to do with, with these serial killers and these murder, like school shootings and stuff like that.
Well, with especially with like the mass shootings and things like that, there's been a lot of evidence that says that basically what it is just copycat. Like just somebody sees that happen and then that kind of whatever you want to say, like affirms in them that they can do it, or also makes them think that it's the thing to do. So the more you see, the more you're going to keep seeing. Like, so they're basically just like perpetuating this thing where it's just going to keep going on and on and on. They're giving it like attention, and then it just causes other people to do it. And
Yeah.
it's a whole big old fucking clusterfuck at this point.
Something that's funny about this though is I think the producers of this, because this movie, like I mean, it's a well-made movie. It's like a 90-minute movie, but it's a total downer, man. I mean,
Yeah, there's nothing in this movie that's like
there's nothing at all. Like, so they had him go back and add the Imagine song, and then put the John Lennon, the vigil for John Lennon at the very end to give it a little bit of an upbeat sort of thing towards the end, which I thought was kind of funny.
it didn't work. It was already it's already too late.
I would have thought that Imagine would have been even like too much for them to afford back then.
I would have thought so too. Really, like the
Yeah.
riots and all that. But yeah, like I don't know how to explain it other than just to say that it's like just a series of violent acts broken up into categories is really what it is.
Yeah.
And
It's
I
saying
mean, it's
after scene.
yeah, it's effective for sure.
I
With
think
kind
it's
of
like,
like
it's not as hardcore as Faces of Death, though. If people are thinking
no,
it's like that, I mean, there are some shots, some quick shots that are kind of like morbid and everything, and there are real deaths. But as far as graphically shown, there's not a whole lot of that.
I mean, there is a couple shots though where it's kind of like I mean, a couple people get shot and it's pretty close up, but you don't really see like
I mean, it's not
anything.
like gratuitous, though, really. I mean, like Faces of Death, where they focus in on, they zoom in on it and shit. But
No, it's not like Bud Dwyer or anything like that. I'll say that for sure.
I don't want to say I enjoyed this movie because this is not like something I'd normally watch, but it was interesting. I mean, I like documentaries anyway, and what's funny about this one too is this one up until probably about 4 or 5 years ago never received an official release in the United States. Did you hear about this?
No, no, I had no
I
idea.
I think Severin Films, when they come out with the Blu-ray, like in 2016, that was the very first official release that this thing had gotten here in the US. It'd been out, I think, in Japan. It was a big hit in Japan.
Of course, those
Yeah.
fuckers.
And even England had it out, oddly enough, before the United States. So it's interesting because, like, it is kind of, I don't know. It's called The Killing of America. So I don't know if the powers that be, the studios, maybe didn't want to have anything to do with it or what. But yeah, this thing never saw the light of day until just like 2016, I think.
It is actually really good though. Like I don't know how to, you would, but the way we would describe it, you wouldn't think it would be. But like the narration and everything that kind of holds it together is really good because it's really just exploring like that time period of violence. Um,
Yeah.
if they did
You know
one
what
of those,
that guy's voice reminds me of? You remember the old show Dragnet where he would talk in
yeah,
the
yeah, the guy would talk is like the
what was the
narration all the
guy's
time.
name? Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Oh God, you talking about the character's name or the actual guy's name?
Either one,
The
I don't
character's
know.
name was Friday, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And then
He
he
was
was
just
like,
like, yeah, they had a didn't they have a Dragnet movie like
yeah,
a
it had Tom
remake?
Hanks and
Oh God, yeah, Dan
Dan
Aykroyd.
Aykroyd. Yeah, I actually like that movie. It's pretty good.
I haven't
But
seen it. I saw it in the theater, but I have not seen it since. I remember liking it as a kid, but I actually remember liking the Dragnet show on Nick at Night back in the day, the old one.
yeah, it wasn't a bad show. But like
that guy's
the,
voice, yeah, totally
yeah,
reminds me of the Friday guy.
the narration though is really the only thing that holds it together from just being like just a bunch of like gore and shit or like shootings, things like that.
Yeah,
Slapped
if
together.
anybody wants to look that guy up, I mean, he has done a ton. Chuck Riley was the name, narrator, famous for one of the original, like, coming soon to a theater near you.
It's kind of, you know what it is though. It's kind of like Bowling for Columbine before fucking Bowling from Columbine came out, because it's all the way through just talking about like how we own so many guns and there's so many shootings and like there's all this violence and with the cops. It's like all that shit that's prevalent now is like was in this movie 40 years ago, which is crazy to me. But yeah, it's definitely worth looking at.
I think so too. I mean, like I said, it's nothing that I would say that I enjoyed, but it was interesting. And if you're into this sort of thing, true crime stuff, very early documentary for it, 1981, The Killing of American, or Buddy William, aka Dumile. This was a request back in April that we're just now getting to, so we're a little bit behind, but we appreciate you always picking some of these interesting movies for us to check out. Give us the thumbs up, like, subscribe, and if you subscribe, here's something else you can do. Once you subscribe, you can click the bell notification, right? And it'll notify you anytime that Dead Pit puts up new shit.
Or don't. I really don't give a if you do.
I want you to. I want you to.
I don't care.
Let's keep our community growing here on YouTube.
I don't like it. I don't want you to do nothing.
Listen, they need to do that, pal.
No, don't you dare touch it.
Thumbs up, subscribe, and click that bell.
Hey folks, it's Oak Early Jaws. I might be banned off of YouTube, but that doesn't mean I can get you some great shirts over at shop.deadpit.com. First, we got Steve Bedingfield post goes against our community standards in nudity or sexual activity. We got the deadpit.com shirt. We got Cardboard. We got L Lord. We got Tales from the Dark Side. We got Dead Pit. And we got a Princess Puffin shirt, boss. It doesn't get any fucking better. Brandon, add the accident. Oh. But these shirts just get better and better, boss. You gotta go over to shop.deadpit.com and pick you up some shirts right fucking now. What are you fucking waiting for? Do it. Do it now, because old Curly Jaw said so.
Thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. Dead Pit on Patreon.com is the only place to check out a complete archive of the old Dead Pit radio shows all the way back from 2005 on, in addition to the midweek shows and fan commentaries, exclusive podcasts, and much more. Dead Pit on Patreon.com if you're interested. Tiers start at only $1.